Imagine this. A regular drone, the kind you can buy online.
Hmm.
Suddenly it's weaponized, maybe packed with explosives, heading for a crowd, or even targeting a world leader.
Mm.
Or think about a whole swarm of tiny drones working together, slipping past defenses to hit, say, our power grid.
Yeah, it's unsettling stuff.
And it's not science fiction anymore, is it? These are like real threats, dangers that security folks are dealing with, well, right now.
Absolutely. The threat landscape has shifted dramatically.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds on Counter-Unmanned Aircraft System Strategy, or CUAS. It's all about how experts are trying to get ahead of this malicious drone problem.
That's right.
And what's really fascinating, looking through the sources you sent over, is how insights from, believe it or not, terrorism and counterterrorism are shaping these CUAS strategies, making them smarter, more sophisticated.
It's a powerful connection, definitely, leveraging hard-won knowledge.
So our mission today is to show you how that connection works, how it helps, anticipate drone threats, simulate attacks, design better defenses, outmaneuver the adversary.
Counter, disrupt, neutralize.
Exactly. Especially in tricky situations like asymmetric warfare, keeping cities safe, securing borders, protecting things like power plants or airports.
Critical infrastructure, yeah.
We're going to unpack some real-world cases, look at specific tactics, and even get into how behavioral science psychology basically fits into all this. It's your shortcut to getting up to speed on something huge.
Sounds good.
So, to kick things off, what's the biggest change? What's really different about how experts are thinking about CUAS now, based on these sources, compared to maybe traditional air defense?
Well, I think the key insight is that CUAS isn't just about reacting anymore. It's moving beyond that.
Okay, beyond just shooting things down.
Right. It's about getting ahead of the threat, preemption, designing systems that can actually, outmaneuver the drones. If you look at the bigger picture, the real goal is to neutralize that malicious use.
Before it happens.
Ideally, yes. Across all those critical areas you mentioned, urban security, borders, vital infrastructure, stop the attack before it achieves its objective.
Okay, that makes sense. Proactive, not just reactive. To really feel the urgency here, the sources dive into some, frankly, pretty chilling real-world examples.
Mm-hmm.
What case study really stands out to you? Maybe one that was particularly surprising.
Well, the ISIS attacks in Mosul back in 2016, 2017, that's a stark one.
What happened there?
ISIS took ordinary commercial drones, the kind anyone could buy, modified them, and used them to drop IEDs, improvised explosives, onto Iraqi forces, coalition forces.
Oh, it's like that.
Just like that. And it caused significant disruption on the battlefield. Plus, the psychological impact was huge.
I can imagine. So what was the immediate takeaway for CUAS from that?
It really hammered home the need for real-time drone detection. You couldn't wait. And you needed options, both kinetic, like, yes, shooting them down,
A direct approach.
and non-kinetic methods, like jamming the control signals or GPS. It also showed that the adversaries, they're low cost, they're mobile, they're decentralized.
Started to pin down.
Exactly, which really challenges those old-school defense ideas based on big, expensive, fixed systems. The real insight wasn't just we need defenses, it was realizing CUAS has to be agile, adaptable, fighting these asymmetric threats with clever countermeasures, not just brute force.
That adaptability piece sounds crucial. It's incredible how they repurposed simple tech. Now, speaking of impact, the sources also mentioned the Houthi drone attack on the Saudi oil facilities in 2019. What was the big CUAS lesson there?
Ah, yes, Ab Kuwait, that was a big one. Precision drone swarms hit the Aramco plant and the impact. It temporarily cut the global oil supply by about 5%.
5%, that's huge. How did they get through?
That's the key point from a CUAS perspective. The detection failed, largely because they used these stealthy, very low-altitude approaches, flew under the radar, quite literally. It drove home the urgent need for better long-range radar, sure, but also AI, artificial intelligence that could specifically detect swarms, not just single aircraft. It showed the limits of traditional air defense against these new tactics.
Right, defenses designed for planes or missiles might miss a low, slow swarm. And then there was that assassination attempt, very public, on President Maduro in Venezuela, 2018.
Yeah.
That must have brought up different issues again.
Oh, absolutely. A totally different scenario. Explosive drones targeted him while he was giving a speech.
During a speech. Good grief.
Yeah. It caused panic, obviously, and the military response, well, it wasn't effective in the moment. What that incident really highlighted was the critical need for dedicated CUAS defense for high-value targets, HVTs. Protecting specific individuals, especially in dynamic public settings, presents unique challenges.
So, different threat, different kind of protection needed. These examples really paint a picture of how fast this is all moving, how sophisticated the threats are becoming.
They really do. It's constant evolution.
Okay, so given these challenges, what are some of the clever CUAS strategies the sources talk about, particularly the ones borrowing from counterterrorism? Can you walk us through maybe one or two?
Certainly. One really direct adaptation is in perimeter protection. Think fences, but for drones.
Okay.
The inspiration came straight from how military bases in Iraq and Afghanistan set up perimeters to counter IEDs.
Right, layered defenses.
Exactly. So the CUAS setup uses a mixed radar to detect RF jammers to disrupt signals, optical cameras for visual confirmation. You put this layered system around sensitive places like airfields, embassies, military zones.
Makes sense, but don't you get tons of false alarms? Like birds or friendly drones?
That's where the refinement comes in. A key to making it work is using AI artificial intelligence to classify drone behavior. Building libraries of what normal, harmless drone activity looks like versus suspicious activity. That helps filter out the noise, reduce those false positives.
Smart. So it's not just seeing something, but understanding what it's seeing. What else? Any other interesting adaptations?
Yeah, another really compelling area is adapting behavioral insights. Taking ideas from how counterterrorism tracks, say, radicalization behavior.
Okay. How does that apply to drones?
Well, CUAS adapts this by modeling drone behavior. Looking at flight paths, how often a drone visits an area, whether it's loitering suspiciously.
Like casing a target.
Precisely. Trying to flag what you might call malicious intent before an attack. The tech behind this involves behavioral AI, pattern recognition, using things like geofencing to mark sensitive areas.
Interesting.
And it's not just for fixed sites. The sources also talk about CUAS in urban operations. Think city centers.
More complex environment.
Much more. The inspiration there comes from anti-insurgency sweeps, like in Kashmir or Baghdad. So the CUAS approach uses mobile patrols, teams equipped with directional jammers, portable radar, moving through dense urban areas.
Taking the defense to the threat.
Exactly. And connecting this back, these aren't just lab ideas. They're real adaptations of field-proven counterinsurgency methods, but specifically tailored for drones. It allows for a much more dynamic, responsive kind of defense.
It's clear these strategies are very focused on the adversary's actions. But what about their thinking? The sources also mention integrating behavioral science. Why is that so important here?
That's a really sharp question. Because the tech is only half the battle, right? Behavioral science helps predict the intent behind the drone use. It helps assess the operator's likely behavior, and it can even influence your own tactical decisions.
Okay, how so?
It adds this layer of psychological understanding to what could seem like just a tech problem. For instance, intent analysis uses those drone behavior models we talked about, like spotting a drone loitering near a VIP zone to predict hostile intent.
Makes sense.
Then there's understanding decision heuristics. That means anticipating how, say, non-state actors might plan drone missions, often trying to get the biggest impact for the lowest cost or risk. Understanding how they think helps you anticipate what they might do.
So you're trying to get inside the operator's head, in a way. How does that translate into actual defense measures?
Precisely. And it does translate. For example, behavioral science informs psychological deterrence, using things like visibly obvious CUAS towers or maybe even sending out decoy signals to make operators think twice before they even launch.
Discourage them up front.
Right. You can also use things like fear and anxiety metrics, basically mapping how civilians react to drone threats to fine-tune public safety warnings, make them effective but not overly alarming.
That's subtle.
And one more, cognitive bias mapping. This involves analyzing an adversary's potential overconfidence. Maybe they think their drone plan is foolproof. If you can anticipate that bias, you can plan more effective counter moves, maybe lure them into a trap.
Wow, that's deep. So with all these complex strategies, mixing tech and psychology,
Yeah.
how do you actually test them? It sounds like you really need to put yourself in the adversary's shoes.
You absolutely do. And this brings up the next critical point, preparedness. The sources really emphasize using red teaming and wargaming. And again, this is directly inspired by counterterrorism training methods.
Red teaming, like having your own team pretend to be the bad guys.
Exactly that. You build these terrorist drone cell red teams whose job is to try and beat your defenses. They simulate attacks, constantly probing for weaknesses.
Stress testing the system.
Rigorously.
Huh?
And you use wargaming matrices, essentially structured scenarios, to test out all your different CUAS options, both kinetic and non-kinetic, against various attack types. See what works best where.
Okay.
They even incorporate psychological operations, or PSYOPS, into this testing, thinking about how to influence the operators themselves, maybe through decoy frequencies or spreading certain information.
It sounds incredibly thorough. But all this effort, these advanced strategies, how do you actually measure if they're working? How do you quantify the success?
That's a fair question. Effectiveness needs to be measured. The sources suggest using something called a CUAS force impact matrix. It's a way to actually quantify the difference these integrated strategies make.
Okay, like tracking specific metrics.
Exactly. So you compare before CUAS and after integrated CUAS. For instance, drone intrusions detected. It might go from low, relying on manual spotting, to high with automated tracking systems.
Makes sense.
Damage prevention success.
Right.
Maybe it was less than 30% effective before, but with integrated CUAS, you're looking at over 80% prevention.
That's a massive jump.
It is. Or operator apprehension rate. Maybe it was under 10%. Very hard to catch them. But with techniques like RF triangulation, using radio signals to find the operator.
Pinpoint their location.
Right. You could potentially get that rate up to around 50%. And maybe just as importantly, civilian panic distress. You see a shift from high levels of panic during an incident to moderate or even low levels because the response is quicker and more effective.
So it's not just about stopping the drone. It's about managing the entire incident, including the human reaction. It really transforms it from a reactive scramble to something where you can actually measure and predict outcomes much better.
That's a great way to put it. It's about moving towards quantifiable effectiveness and more predictable results, a significant leap, as you said.
This brings us to a specific tool mentioned in the sources, the ESPIRIDI Drone versus CUAS Simulation Matrix. What exactly is that, and why is it considered so important for future defense planning?
Ah, yes, the ESPIRIDI Matrix. Lynn Frederick Zuse developed this. What's fascinating here is that it provides this really comprehensive framework for all the things we've been talking about. Wargaming, red teaming, and analyzing that behavioral impact. And it's designed to be adaptable. You can use it for military planning, homeland security, airports, even smart cities or border protection. It's quite versatile.
So how does it work? What does it look like?
Well, it lays out key scenarios. For example, an urban IED drop scenario. A quadcopter tries to cause civilian panic. The matrix might show the counter as an RF jammer plus an optical tracker. Then it gives an effectiveness score, say 70%, and describes the likely operator reaction. Maybe they abort the mission or the drone crashes.
So it directly links the countermeasure to the operator's likely response.
Exactly. It maps that cause and effect, including the behavioral element. Another example might be a VIP assassination attempt with a kamikaze FPV drone.
Fast, first-person view.
Right. Objective, kill the HVT. The counter shown could be a GPS spoofer combined with a net gun. Effectiveness, maybe 80%. Outcome, operator has to reroute, target survives.
I see.
Or think about a swarm raid on a border, micro-drones used for surveillance, or maybe trying to create a breach. The counter could be radar plus AI analysis plus a laser-directed energy weapon, a DEW.
Laser defense.
Yeah. Effectiveness, maybe 90%. Outcome, the swarm loses command coherence, the mission fails. So it gamifies these encounters.
And you mentioned it maps operator profiles, too.
Critically, yes. This behavior-based outcome mapping is key. It outlines how the CUAS response should be tailored depending on who the operator likely is. Well, if it's likely a lone actor, say a terrorist, the matrix might suggest they'd probably escalate, maybe launch a backup drone if the first one is stopped. So the CUAS response needs to prioritize multi-vector defense, be ready for follow-up attacks.
Okay.
But if it's organized crime, like a smuggler, their reaction might be different. Maybe they'll switch tactics, try again at night, or use boats. So CUAS needs to deploy thermal imaging, maybe even underwater sensors.
Adapting the defense to the adversary's likely adaptation.
Precisely. Or consider an insider threat. They might shift from a direct drone attack to using social engineering to get access. So the counter-response involves hardening internal security, maybe using biometric controls linked to the CUAS system. This level of detailed behavior-focused planning is what makes it potentially so robust.
It's incredibly sophisticated.
Yeah.
But with such powerful tech and this deep dive into adversary tactics, what about the ethical side? How do the sources address using these strategies responsibly, especially in civilian areas?
That's a vital question, and the sources do address it. How do you balance security with civil liberties, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Several critical points come up. One is the need to avoid overly aggressive militarization of civil spaces, finding that balance between necessary surveillance and protecting people's rights.
A tricky line to walk.
Very. There's also an emphasis on using those behavioral nudges first whenever possible. Things like warning alerts, maybe audio jamming to disrupt the operator, before resorting to active takedown measures like shooting or netting the drone. Graduated response.
Least intrusive option first.
That's the idea. And finally, the sources stress the absolute necessity of strong partnerships. CUAS can't operate in a vacuum. It needs tight integration with local counter-terrorism units, border forces, aviation security, sharing intelligence effectively.
So it's a whole system approach, not just a tech fix.
Exactly. It ensures the approach is comprehensive, coordinated, and considers those broader ethical and societal implications.
What an incredible deep dive this has been. We've really unpacked a lot. How crucial it is to think like the adversary, borrowing lessons from counterterrorism and insurgency.
Simulating that logic, yeah.
We've seen the power of using behavioral science, creating predictive systems, not just reactive ones.
Adding that human understanding.
And how effective it is to blend those tried and tested counterterrorism tactics with this new agile CUAS technology. It feels like it's less about just building higher walls and more about thinking smarter, using every insight to stay ahead.
That's a good summary. It's about agility and intelligence as much as technology.
So here's something to think about as you go about your day. Consider how really understanding the mindset, the tactics, the logic of an adversary, even learning from something as dark as terrorism studies, can unlock totally new ways to protect ourselves, protect our communities, our infrastructure from these kinds of emerging threats. And maybe ask yourself, how could applying this kind of adversarial thinking, really trying to understand the other side's perspective and goals, help solve complex problems in other areas you encounter?